I like set myself a goal to sleep at least 8 hours a night, and water polo really does take up a lot of my time. So I have practiced for 2.5 hours Monday through Thursday every week.
So in terms of like the time that you spend, like how long do you spend before the test to do these practice tests?
So I started studying around 2 months before the test. And the first practice test I took, I got a 1380. So like I spent like a decent amount of time during those 2 months studying, and especially in the last 2 weeks was pretty like crunch time where I did almost like a practice test a day until the test date. But yeah, the majority, like 90% of the work I did was just doing practice tests, learning from my mistakes, and just keeping up, being consistent with the work.
So in terms of like reading speed, do you have any like strategies for people who don't read so quickly? And that's an issue.
No, probably just go off the questions, just like what I said earlier. If you're not a fast reader, then I try to skim, because I always try to skim the passage first before, like get a general idea of what it's about, but I won't read it in depth until it gets to the questions.
What is your overall, I guess, like plan for the future?
I'm really hoping to study computer science, AI, machine learning at like a top university. So like MIT, Caltech, CMU, hopefully. Especially, yeah, CMU has been like a great experience for me this summer. So I'm really hoping to be able to go back.
Guys, before we get into the podcast, 91.6% of you guys are not subscribed. So please do hit the subscribe button since it will help get even crazier guests and blow up the channel. So yeah, let's get back into the video.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Gen Z Fastlane. Today we have Patrick here, who is a rising junior. So yeah, Patrick, why don't you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Patrick. I'm a rising junior at Interlake High School in Loving, Washington. We're part of the IB program, and my school does accelerated IB. So I'm going into my second year of IB next year as a junior. And then outside of school, I'm a big water polo player, and then love to hike and cook as well. So.
Nice. So first, let's talk about some of your achievements with water polo. So like in the beginning, what inspired you to play this sport?
Yeah. So when I was little, like around 6 years old, I had asthma. It was pretty bad. So because of that, I got into swimming because that really helped with getting my asthma to go away. So I did swim team for a couple years, and then one of my friends from Boy Scouts, he did water polo. And I saw him playing water polo, like having a tournament while I was having a swim meet in the same pool. So that's kind of what really got me into doing that, because I really like it because it combines the endurance of swimming, but also has like the fast paced moments of like a ball game, and that's what really like drew me in.
Nice. So in terms of like competitive water polo and your academics, I think most people, they do some kind of varsity sport, right? So what is your strategy to balancing it and competing as well?
Yeah. So I like set myself a goal to sleep at least 8 hours a night, and water polo really does take up a lot of my time. So I have practiced for 2.5 hours Monday through Thursday every week during the club season, and varsity. We add our practice on Friday as well. So that takes a lot of time out of my day. So I just have to be really efficient with my time. So along with that, I've developed strategies to keep myself from procrastinating on schoolwork, and then also to study for tests a lot faster, so I don't have to spend as much time doing that.
Nice. So talking more about like the IB side of things, of course you do accelerated IB. So how have your first year been for IB, like compared to your initial thoughts?
Honestly, initially I thought first year IB was gonna be pretty rough. But it turns out IB seems very scary. A lot of people will tell you that it's really bad or really scary. But if you are able to manage your time well and are able to study very efficiently, then you'll do well. I took one IB test this year, so I'm only taking 5 next year. I took biology SL this year and got a 7 because I was really able to um, learn all the material really quickly in class, and then also study very quickly before the test as well.
Nice. So I think we spoke about this like in terms of like the accelerated IB program in the last year. You do get like internship experiences. So do you think that will play like a huge role with your application? And is this an advantage for you?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to senior year. Senior year is when people really take it easy in school and go out and find really interesting internship opportunities. A lot of people from my school, we all go to UW and do some research or find like some research assistant positions. And um, I think that's a really big factor in like the school placements that a lot of my school students like have achieved. Like every year we have I think one or two people going to MIT, multiple people going to CMU. I think last year it was like four or five people going to CMU, and then just a widespread, at least like one person going to each IB. And I think that research internship is like really useful because not a lot of people get that opportunity since they're going through like almost 4 years of schooling, while our fourth year is almost kind of like a half year because we were only in school half the time.
Nice. Sounds super advantageous. So, talking about applications, like how important do you think the SAT is? Of course, you do SAT tutoring, which we could talk about later on, all the tips. You got 1590, which is very impressive. So, and yeah, like as
Mhm.
test scores right now are mandatory for most of the schools. Do you think it's still important to get SAT?
Yeah, I think it's still important. SAT in the previous couple of years, it's taken like a dip in like importance levels. But now it's starting to rise, especially with the advent of stuff like ChatGPT and other like AI tools. A lot of schools are re-requiring the SAT and placing that almost like at a higher like importance level than essays now because so much of like the essay process can just be like AI'd. But the SAT is 100% like your talent. It's just like 100% human. So that's why I think it's going to become more and more important.
Got it. So, like we with SAT, many people would say like in order to get like a high score, you really need like tutoring, right? And basically most of the
Mhm.
tutoring that I personally like heard of like from my friends, they're either really not that great or they're really great. So how many times did it take you to achieve this like 1590 SAT score? Did you get any support from that?
I took the SAT once. So the first time I took it, it was just like a 1590 and then decided to not retake that, obviously. And then, yeah, I didn't really do any tutoring or online courses for the SAT either. It's kind of funny because I'm doing tutoring now. But honestly, I feel like tutoring isn't very needed if you're willing to put in the work and um, and are able to study for tests efficiently. Honestly, all I used was just two prep books, and then I just went through those, picked out the most important sections, read them, did some exercises, but the majority of my studying was just doing a lot of practice tests, and that was what really helped in the end.
So in terms of like the time that you spend, like how long do you spend before the test to do these practice tests?
So I started studying around 2 months before the test. And the first practice test I took, I got a 1380. Um, so like I spent like a decent amount of time during those 2 months studying, and especially in the last 2 weeks was pretty like crunch time where I did almost like a practice test a day until the test date. But yeah, the majority, like 90% of the work I did was just doing practice tests, learning from my mistakes, and um, just keeping up, being consistent with the work.
Nice. I like how you place like the test in like a very simple term, but I think many people they literally struggle to get that high of a grade. So let's dive deeper in like to like the math and English specifically. So with math, 75% of it it's multiple choice and 25% of it is fill in the blanks. You get 70 minutes and
Mhm.
it's broken down to two sections, one of them which is the first module and the second one is the adaptive module, which can either be harder and easier based on how you did in the first question. And the same for the English, right? And you also get a calculator in math, which is super helpful. So, what was your core strategies for the math sections?
Just like a disclaimer before I go into this, I took the paper SAT, so it was like longer, in like a slightly different format. But a lot of the strategies that I used are still very like applicable to the digital, especially for math, because the math didn't really change as much. So I think compared to paper, the math digital, it got actually easier, even with the adaptive section, because you're allowed a calculator in both sections. But with the math, it's just all comes down to practice. It's like same with reading and writing, but like with math, like more especially so because with math, you want to be familiar enough with the material that you have time to double check all your answers after you're finished with the first pass. And what I saw during a lot of my practice tests was that a lot of the mistakes I made on math were because I didn't double check. And I made a lot of, because for me, I made a lot of dumb mistakes on the first pass, and the double check helped me to smooth those all out and produce a perfect score in the end from the math section. Um, but in order to do that, you need to be fast because there's obviously like a time limit. And I've also heard from a lot of people that the timing on both the math and reading and writing sections are not good for them. So just you want to be so familiar with the concepts that you're able to go through the entire test in about half the time that's allocated for you, or even less than half the time. Because for me, I finished in around like a third of the time required or given to you. And then I was able to use the rest of the time to double check and even triple check some answers I was especially unsure about. And also, since you get a lot more calculator support on the digital SAT, it's really important that you learn how to use your calculator effectively. So for my experience, I learned a couple shortcuts, and also especially a big thing is learning how to use the graphing function on your calculator. That was super, super useful for me on the test and saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest, parts with math is that right now with, the digital model, everyone finishes the first module really quickly. They have like 20 minutes or like more than half the time left. And with the second module, sometimes you would run out of time with like the harder questions. So what are your strategies with like the harder questions? Do you tackle them first before the first couple of questions, or do you go in order?
Um, for me, I just went in order, but like it all comes down like because so in order to not run out of time for these harder questions, it's like imperative that you're able to do the easier questions a lot faster. So just it all comes back to like having a good grasp of the concepts needed. So if you're able to do those easier questions faster, then you have more time for the harder questions. Also, another big test taking strategy I had was that if you're stuck on a question for more than like an allotted like the amount of time you're supposed to be spending on the question, just circle it and come back to it later. So finish the other questions first. Don't get stuck up on one question for too long, um, or else you'll miss some of the easier questions at the end. So,
Yeah. So for each question, do you like have like a equal allocation for timing, or like what's your strategy with that?
yeah, I just equally allocated it. I just uh, allocated like a block of time like that I want to spend on the whole test for the first pass, and then divided that by the number of questions. And then
So in the test, you would suggest looking at the timer because I think some people are get intimidated by like the countdown. So what do you think?
yeah, please use the timer. For me, since it was paper, I brought my own watch. I'm pretty sure they give you a timer on the digital. I would assume so. I've never taken it, but I would assume so. But yeah, if they don't, bring a watch, right? But it's imperative that you're able to use your time effectively, so you don't run out. So just always keep an eye on the timer.
Got it. So moving on to English, you have like the reading and the writing section, right? And I think English is probably one of the biggest struggles for, I guess, many students as well. So talking about reading first, what was your overall approach?
hmm Yeah. So when I first did my first couple practice tests, I thought what many people think in that the reading and writing sections they're very like subjective and kind of like RNG because initially I thought that many of these options would work as just as well, and I didn't know exactly why one was right. But if you think about it, but if you think about it, the reading has to be objective, or else this test won't work. Because the point of standardized tests like the SAT is to give colleges a good representation of where you stand compared to your peers. And that wouldn't be possible if the answers were subjective. So there's has to be one clear right answer for every question. And once you know that, the reading and writing becomes a lot easier. Because since you know that there has to be one right question, then it's kind of obvious that the answer to the question must be somewhere in the passage, like it's explicitly restated or demonstrated in the passage, or else it cannot be 100% right, which is the requirement of the question. So a lot of questions on the reading and writing sections are also structured similarly. There's a lot of questions that are like given that ask you to find that asks you like what's the main theme of paragraph two, right? And then the next question will be an immediate follow up that says which of these lines supports that best. And for these questions, it's really useful to do the second question first. Look at the lines and see which one of these accurately restates or demonstrates one of the answer choices in the first question. And then it applies to all other questions. That's just an easier example because it gives you a set of lines to look at. But for all other questions too, they will all the answers will just be like that. They just won't give you the line numbers. So you just gotta find it yourself. So that's why I'd recommend reading the questions first before the reading because I know a lot of people try to read the passage super carefully on the first time, and then they always run out of time because you inevitably have to come back and reread when you go to the questions. So when I did the test, I just let the questions guide what I read. So I only really read the parts that I exactly needed to read instead of reading the whole passage, which a lot of times has just a lot of filler.
So in terms of like reading speed, do you have any like strategies for people who don't read so quickly, and that's an issue?
Probably just go off the questions, just like what I said earlier. If you're not a fast reader, then I try to skim because I always try to skim the passage first, before, like get a general idea of what it's about, but I won't read it in depth until it gets to the questions. So like in that case, it just comes down to practice, knowing generally like what to look for. And then once you find those patterns, then reading speed shouldn't be an issue.
So with all of the different like question types, would you say there's like a constant strategy for them, like just like mapping out keywords, like you heard those like classic strategies that people use to take the test? Is it just those ones, or are there any other special ones that you use as well?
It's really just kind of what I said about looking for restatements and demonstrations, something that's like explicitly, you want to find the correct answer will always be like explicitly stated in the passage somewhere, either as a restatement or a demonstration. So you just got to look for those. There's not really, that's really the only strategy I used. Just, and then generally know like where you think these things will be. So just like, again, that comes back to skimming the passage, knowing generally what each paragraph is about. So you generally know where to look.
Got it. So just in summary for like the overall SAT, do you think having some sort of like tutoring, or just you think that grinding papers will just be already enough? So you think there's no special skills for it?
Mm. um, at least for me on the paper, I felt like tutoring was not needed because I'm also like generally just good at multiple choice questions. So that wasn't really a problem for me. I know some other people are pretty like don't feel comfortable doing that, and then that's when you might need to get a tutor. Also, the digital doesn't have nearly as many practice tests as the paper did because for the paper I just did a lot of the past tests that were available online, like past real SATs. Digital doesn't really have that because College Board and the ACT, they're all becoming more strict with their copyright and stuff. So I feel like now for digital, since there's kind of like a practice test deficit, I feel like it'd be more useful for the digital than the paper to get a tutor. But I still feel like if you're willing to put in the work and willing to um and able to follow these strategies, then a tutor necessarily isn't needed. Um, but it's honestly it's up to you and what you want to do in the end.
All right, got it. So let's move on to like another topic. So one of the things that you're currently doing is the Move Foundation. And could you dive deeper on what basically tutorials is and how it's useful for software or like science students?
Yeah. So basically, Tutorials is a free online science trainer. So think like a lot of different questions about every discipline in science. So biology, chemistry, physics, and we just recently added Earth and space science, which is very cool. But basically, it's also adaptive, so you have your own rating and you're able to answer more questions, different questions based on that. And we have a huge question base of over 3,000 different questions over all these subjects, and it's really tailored for students like me who are doing a lot of APs and IBs because a lot of these questions are structured after those and often taken from past tests as well.
Got it. So what was your inspiration to start this Move Foundation, and what do you have in mind for like the future?
Yeah, I came in as a software contributor like a year ago, and then I just put in a lot of work, made a lot of contributions, and was promoted to director of software development. And now, looking forward, we're looking to add a lot more different features such as like competitions and stuff to make the user to kind of gamify the website more and increase more user engagement, as well as just expanding our question base and um, providing a lot more practice for AP and IB students. And we've already seen a lot of good results. A lot of people have already told us that this has really helped them with their IB and AP tests, and we see a huge jump uh, in user counts during the testing seasons as well.
Nice. So I guess I'll also link that in the description for anyone who's also interested to check this out. So moving towards, your experience with lifeguarding. So you have done, lifeguard, and basically, yeah, you have done lifeguard, I think for like a couple years, for a year now, more than a year. So what was your overall experience with that, and what motivated you to really take on this role?
Yeah. Um, the reason I got into lifeguarding was because of the water polo community. Almost everyone on my high school club and zone teams, they all had experiences as lifeguards because that's kind of the natural career progression for career choice for water polo players because you got to use all those skills that you've developed in the water and you got to use them towards like saving lives. So that's what kind of inspired me to do that. Um, and so far, the lifeguarding experience has been great. I get a really flexible work schedule that I can plan around my many other commitments, and I usually go on duty around once a week, uh, and then sometimes more during the summer.
Nice. So in terms of like everything, just wrapping everything together, like with all of your extracurriculars, your interest with saxophone as well and software development, what is your overall, I guess, like plan for the future?
Um, I'm really hoping to study computer science, AI, machine learning at like a top university. So like MIT, Caltech, CMU, hopefully. Especially, yeah, CMU has been like a great experience for me this summer, so I'm really hoping to be able to go back. But yeah, and then I'm also hoping to play water polo in college too. So I've been talking to some coaches recently, and I'm hoping to go Division 3 at schools like MIT and Caltech, which provide a really good balance between studying and also athletics. And then
Nice.
I'm also just hoping to continue my other interests through college as well.
Yeah, nice. So something I really respect about your profile is like if like for other people that got into Jazzy family, they probably have like 2,000 different things to talk about, right? 2,000 different things. And something that I noticed is that you have like a consistent pattern, right? You only focus on a couple of things rather than diving into like multiple different projects at the same time. So what was your overall idea with that as well? Is it like something that you think will benefit in your application compared to other people?
Hmm. Yeah, so compared to a lot of other people, I started like doing a lot of this stuff like pretty late. I only like I learned how to code only like 2 years ago, compared to other people who have been coding since like elementary school, right? Um, so so I decided like the only way for me to be able to like stand out in this community was um, for me to do a couple things really, really well and like dive deep into them instead of like spreading myself out super thin. Because a lot of people they do, as you said, like a lot of different things because they were able to start a lot earlier than me. But I feel like if I'm able to do these things well, just like maintain good grades in school, focus on water polo, get recruited for that to Division 3, and then keep working on CS and ML, then I should be able to get into the college.
Yeah. So moving back to like your journey on like CS and everything, Could you provide like a general roadmap on how you started to like how you became yourself today?
Yeah. For CS, as I said, I started coding around like 2 years ago. So like the summer before ninth grade. And then I first jump started myself with some free courses on edX.com. You can probably link that in the podcast,
Mhm.
like in the
Yeah.
podcast description as well, because that's a really good. That's like a it has so many good free resources and good classes. So I took a couple of classes on Java and object-oriented programming from Georgia Tech. That was really fun. And then honestly, after that, I just started um, doing some competitions such as like Usico, uh, and then working on some just like coding assignments like for myself, doing a lot of like recode problems as well. And then now I'm looking for a more like systematic approach to learning this to make sure I don't have any like holes in my fundamentals and make sure I'm able to um, excel at a higher level. So that's why I decided to take 15122 at CMU, which is a really, really good class. If you ever go there for summer or for college, I really recommend you take that class. But it was a pretty challenging class, but I felt it was a really eye opening experience and a really good experience too.
Nice. So what was the overall metric for you to determine, that like next level jump from like you're capable to be like a software developer after, being a beginner?
Um, I feel like it just that kind of happened when I realized like how fast I was able to pick things up and learn. And that kind of came with tutorials. Like a year ago, I had zero web development experience, didn't know any, like a single line of JavaScript or HTML, CSS, any of that. And then when I first started as a contributor for tutorials, I was able to pick that up super, super quickly and added a whole lot of new features for them and fixed a lot of bugs. And that's why I was able to be promoted to director of software development. And just kind of looking back on that, um, gives me a lot of confidence that I'm able to do the same for other disciplines in the future.
Nice. So it's just key to, I guess, find something that you're really passionate about, and then it'll just go on from there on like your
Yeah, I feel
development.
like I feel like if you're doing things just for the sake of college or just for the sake of money, you're not going to get very far. I feel like if you just follow your passions, college and money will follow. And like if you're able to do it well.
Nice. So just to wrap things up, what is two questions? So number one is, what do you think your purpose in life is?
Um, it's a good question. I honestly like don't know yet. I've only lived for 16 years. And I have a really, hopefully, a really long life ahead of me. Um, but I'm looking to make some sort of social impact, whether it be through doing research when I'm older or starting my own company. That's kind of two of my biggest goals. Um, doing some groundbreaking research and also being an entrepreneur, which I feel are very which are yeah, again like two of my biggest goals in life so far. But yeah.
Yeah. So just the last question to wrap things up. What would be like your biggest advice, other than following your passion, for your younger self or anyone listening?
Um, I feel well as you said, like following your passions is one big thing. I think another um big piece of advice is to kind of like always believe in yourself because I feel like once you lose that belief in yourself, then you kind of lose your ability to do something. And honestly, it's kind of crazy what people are able to do if they just have that confidence and if they have that belief. I've like I myself have had a lot of experience with that, especially with water polo, such as when I'm playing with my regional team in like national tournaments. Um, I just have to like believe in myself that I'm able to contribute well to the team, score goals, and that's when it happens.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you hopping on the Gen Z fast lane. For anyone who's looking to contact Patrick or any of the resources, will be all linked in the description. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Until the next one, peace out.